Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this special episode, and don't forget to support our Patreon. Just $1 or more will get you early access to all of our content as well as other special features. Enjoy the show! The following is a fan-based video under fair use. King Kong, names, characters, and rights are all owned by RKO Pictures, Paramount Pictures, Studio Canal, Universal Pictures, Warner Brothers Pictures, Legendary Pictures, Turner Entertainment, and the Merian C. Cooper Estate. Please support the official release. Try not to act like a Canadian. Blend in. Spread out. Wow! New York City! BigJackFilms here, and welcome to New York City! Alright folks, no April Fools this time around. To kick off the year with the King Kong reviews, I figured I'd finally take a location tour of all the places here in New York City where the films either took place or were shot. Now bear in mind, this episode was filmed a couple of years ago during a trip I took with my dad while filming the King Kong musical review. This was pre-COVID, so there's nothing to worry about. The only thing that was to worry about was the shitty weather. The weather here is so rainy and slushy, I feel like I am literally walking in onto the set of Taxi Driver. Not good weather. I'm not kidding, it was ice storms, hail, rain, everything. And it made filming this episode a tad bit difficult, but not impossible. So I am right now in the middle of this goddamn ice storm blizzard here in the ports of New York. I'm right by Brooklyn, and this is where, I can probably tell, this is pretty much the New York docks. As you can see, there's this giant fucking pirate ship behind me, which would be cool, and as you know, Naomi Watts said in the 2005 film, is this the moving picture ship?
Is this the moving picture ship?
But it's more something on par like this. So, for anybody who might be wondering where the Venture might have been docked in most of the Kong movies, either 33 or 2005, my guess it would be docked right here by this steamboat. Now, this isn't the actual SS Venture, although that would be really cool to see, but this is actually pretty much the closest we're ever going to get to the other Kong movies where the Venture would be parked right out here by Brooklyn, and it would sail off right out into the ocean off to Skull Island, which is pretty cool. Actually, while we're on the subject, why don't we just go ahead and recreate this scene from the original where, you know, Weston would just come right here and walk up and talk to somebody at the Dark Marshal about the ship. So let's just say fuck it and go ahead and do that. So I'm going to be Weston. Say, is this the moving picture ship? The Venturer? Yeah. You going on this crazy voyage? What's crazy about it? I don't know, but everybody on the crew is talking about that crazy fellow that's running it. Carl Denham? Yes, that's the name. He say he ain't scared of nothing. If he wants a picture of a lion, he'll just go up to him and tell him to look pleasant. He's a tough egg, all right, but well, let's talk about this voyage being crazy. Well, everybody's talking about the cargo, for one thing. And I never did see a ship this size with such a crew. Not enough men to handle her? Not enough! 3 times more than the ship needs. I don't see why they're going to have room enough to sleep.
Hey, down there. What do you want?
Is Denham aboard?
Well, who are you?
My name's Weston, theatrical agent.
Oh, why didn't you say so? Come on aboard.
Well, since we're going in chronological order, why don't we go to our next locations where Denham would be trying to find a leading lady for his next picture.
Even if I have to marry one.
However, like I said before, the weather was not in our favor when we did this shoot. If this was 1932 right now and I was Carl Denham looking for our girl, this kind of weather, I'd be like, fuck that, we're going to the island right away. Now, finding an Apple stand in the middle of Times Square actually is pretty much impossible because they, quite frankly, don't exist anymore. Also, as I was passing through this area, I couldn't help but see this as kind of a coincidence. And to be perfectly honest, the closest thing I could find to an Apple stand in Times Square is frickin' Applebee's. Ugh. Oh, God. However, outside of the square, in streets closer to the Hudson River, there are a few Apple stands that do make do for what we couldn't find in the square. Next up, of course, is the classic 50s diner, where Denham proposed to Anne about being the leading lady in his next picture. Now, in the movies, the interiors were all shot in sound stages and weren't necessarily actual locations in New York. However, the closest I could find is where I also found the Apple stands in the streets close by Hudson. And this one seemed to fit the bill with its old school interior design.
What do I have to do?
Just trust me and keep your chin up.
Well, since we're not on the locations for Skull Island at this point, why don't we go from the beginning of the film right to the third act with Kong's lights on Broadway and Times Square. And now, 86 years later, fiction has become a reality. Which, yes, I know the show has since moved on, surprisingly to Japan, but when I made this trip, I was shooting both of these Kong episodes at the same time. And I find it really cool to actually now feel like I'm in the movie where Kong made his Broadway debut. And speaking of world premieres, I'm standing right next to the Radio City Music Hall, and this is one of the two theaters, including the Rockefeller Center, where back in 1933 King Kong had its world premiere here in New York City, which is absolutely amazing. It also premiered at the Grum's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, but for the other coast, this coast here, it premiered here and at the Rockefeller Center. We're gonna go check that out as well. Now, you guys all gotta remember, when the original film came out, it was at the bottom of the Great Depression. A lot of people couldn't eat, a lot of people didn't have homes, there were shanty towns in Central Park. Hell, there were people living on the docks where the Venture would probably be. So to have this movie come out and give people a sense of escapism for an hour and 40 minutes really shows how much the original King Kong stood the test of time and actually made a huge impact on the pop culture. Back in 1933, this whole road was completely filled with people waiting to see this movie some 86 years ago. Absolutely amazing that we're standing here right now where it all happened. So I am standing at the First Republic building on 6th Avenue and 48th Street, I believe. And this building is significant because this is where the RKO Roxy Theater used to be back in 1932. And it's also where King Kong had its other premiere in 1933, because down there is the Radio City Music Hall where it had its premiere, but because so many people were showing up and they ran out of screenings, they had to put a second screening here, which is where the RKO Roxy used to be. And unfortunately, I just got the information that the Roxy Theater was torn down back in the 50s and was later replaced by the First Republic building. So this is the closest we're probably gonna get to where people also stood in line for Kong back in 33. Now, in real life, Times Square actually did act as a premiere for Kong, with the Peter Jackson film in 2005 displaying a full-scale styrofoam Kong right in the middle of the square. This would only be the second time that a styrofoam Kong would appear outside of New York, with the 1976 film using the full-scale styrofoam model for the end of the film. And yes, while Times Square is a bit more cramped nowadays, we can kind of pinpoint where certain locations were in the films. Now, if we're going by the rules of each film, if I'm in the middle of Times Square right now, in the original film, Kong's Theater would have been right about here, and in the 2004-5 film, it would have been right over there by the Palace, which was called the Alabama in the movie, and then in my remake, it's somewhere about there, which is appropriate given that's there, so. Now, at the 1501 Broadway Theater, this street may seem generic at first, but it's more than likely this is where Kong smashed away from the Broadway Theater to escape and cause his rampage in the city. And not to mention, the Hotel Carter strikes an odd resemblance to the hotel that Jack and Anne escaped into in the original. And it makes me wonder if Kong climbed this specific building to try to chase Anne down. But aside from the premiere stuff, there's a lot of King Kong Easter eggs scattered all over Times Square, from a marquee showing the Broadway musical shown at the time, to a Kong Skull Island exhibition in one of the show buildings, which we unfortunately couldn't get into, but there is a full-scale MonsterVerse animatronic Kong hand, and surprisingly enough, at the Ripley's Believe It or Not, a Mighty Joe Young Kong-sized gorilla made entirely out of rubber tires. I gotta admit, whoever sculpted that is very creative and talented.
Everywhere I go, he will not leave me alone, even in M&M form. Ah!
Hell, I discovered the Paramount Building, which is now the Hard Rock Cafe, and here is where the entrance to Confrontation would have taken place. Which, speaking of, why don't we take a look at some locations that inspired the ride with the Queensboro Bridge. Not only was this location used for the 1976 King Kong, but it was also used in films like the first Spider-Man movie. But for Kong, the bridge acts as two significant spots for the Eighth Wonder's history. First off, of course, being 1976, with the National Guard blocking off any bridges from Kong entering the city. The second being the scene where Jack and Dwan escape from the subway train and take a motorcycle across the bridge. But for Confrontation, this acts as one of the most iconic scenes in the attraction, with Kong hanging off the bridge swatting away at helicopters, as guests encounter the Eighth Wonder on the Roosevelt Island Tram. Now, from this angle of the Queensboro Bridge, where the Roosevelt Island Tramway is, obviously the tram vehicle would pass Kong here, but my guess, if they were going to be intercepted by Kong on the street the street scene from the ride, my guess is Kong would be probably around right there from this angle. And he would get up and he would shake the tram and everything, which is all cool. And because I owe it to my childhood self, let's see if we can experience the full Confrontation one last time. Now normally where I'm standing, they'd have seats here on the tram in the original ride, but this one you're just standing, so let's hold on tight.
Please hold on while the cabin's in motion.
Retreating towards the bridge. He's heading towards the bridge.
Oh no! Look straight ahead! It's King Kong! Alright everyone, Chapter 1 knows we're here! We should be okay! Really folks, I see no reason to panic! No! Do not fire! We're too close! Hold your fire! Now, while we may not be on Queens, given it's on the other side of the river, this is probably the closest we're going to get to the same angle where Jeff Bridges entered the arena where Kong was doing the presentation to all the executives of pet trucks. So this is probably the closest we're going to get to getting to the same angle. So, and it's funny I bring that up because we look over here and there's a big kind of soccer park. So you could technically have Kong do his whole presentation here, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm kind of the closest thing we're going to get to the exact angle where Jeff Bridges basically walked in and saw everything happening, saw the chopper flying by, which is pretty cool, but we don't want to go too far into Queens because of timing right now. But yeah, this is probably the closest we're going to get to that scene. Now, digging up the research in where exactly the right station and train bridge was where Kong's attack took place in 1976 was easier said than done. But a little fun behind-the-scenes fact. When they shot this sequence, with the shots of Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange escaping the explosions and sparks from Kong's attack below the bridge, they had to create a fake facade of the train and actually put real pyrotechnics, which actually woke up a lot of the neighbors around Queens. And the production was getting constant 911 calls that night. And while we're on the subject, I might as well bring this up, but finding the original elevated train bridge from the 1933 film is a hell of a lot harder than the 76 remake. And that's mostly due to the fact that most elevated trains in the center of the city pretty much no longer exist. The closest I could get are these elevated structures on the outskirts of the city that act more as a community garden. So as we returned back to Manhattan itself, the weather once again was a bit of a pain in the ass. So much so to the point we had to take shelter somewhere when we got to Times Square. So we decided to make a break and check out Planet Hollywood. Now, having never experienced a Planet Hollywood in my life, I was actually kind of surprised that there were a bunch of costumes and props from several movies. So I figured I could get some footage while I'm at it, because as Carl Denham said in the original,
I found out from experience always to keep my cast and my cameras right with me. Never can tell when you want them.
So you never know if you need to discuss certain props and stuff from movies. For example, I got to see some of the original suits used in
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
Some costumes from Planet of the Apes, a maquette of the 98 Godzilla, the model Batwing from Batman 89, and something totally unexpected, but was sheer fucking luck. Now, I don't want to alarm you guys, but we came across a major discovery here. See that model subway right there? That's one of the ones used in the 1976 film. That's the one of the ones that Rick Baker smashed in the ape suit. They were showing clips from the 76 movie up here. And I was like, what? Why are they showing that? And I was asking them, like I said, don't tell me you have one of the props from the movie here. And they're like, yes. And I was like, and I look up, and there it is. So get a good look, because that is one of the original props used in the 76 remake. Right there, guys. Right there. That is incredible that we're seeing it up this close. It's amazing. Well, after that amazing discovery for the Kong books here on our show, when the weather cleared up the next day, we decided to take a quick little walk around Central Park. This is mostly where, in real historical terms, the shanty towns did exist in 1933, and it's also where in the Peter Jackson film that Kong and Ann had their cute little ice skating sequence. And as we walked out of Central Park, we actually came across the hotel used in Home Alone 2. Which makes me wonder if Tim Curry's working in here today. Never mind, that's the wrong one.
Down the hall and to the left.
Ugh.
Have a lovely day.
Now, during our travels in New York, we came across a few other locations that, while not Kong-related, are kind of cool. Like, for example, Grand Central Station. Now, there isn't much significance to Kong here, but the angle I'm looking at is from another giant monster movie, Cloverfield. Now, here we have what I assume to be one of the United Nations buildings. However, I couldn't find an actual power station. This is probably the closest we're gonna get to Kong's incident in the 1976 film taking out the power station. Although, funny enough, I think I saw this building before once in the 60s Batman movie. The river also acts as the location where Kong would be crossing through to get to the power station. However, in the movie, it was more so Rick Baker in a tank having to be kept floated on a platform and flotation devices so he wouldn't sink and drown in the suit, which is really terrifying. The tanks were actually shot in the backlots at the MGM studios in California, which maybe someday I'll discuss those locations in the future. So as we headed south to our next chronological location, we decided to make a pit stop at Hangover Square, which, to be honest, is where one of my favorite scenes in Kong 76 was shot. This is of course where Jessica Lange and Jeff Bridges were fleeing Kong's rampage and Dwan decided to get a drink. Yeah, that's the pole right there. Lange was grabbing that. They came down from this way.
Buy me a drink, will you? Come on.
Come on.
Buy me a drink.
Come on. 10 more blocks and we got the key to a great apartment.
Listen, what's the hurry?
And yeah, so they just basically, they run down this way. Just kind of right here. I was a bit sped up there. But yeah, they come out here and she'd be like, come on, buy me a drink, buy me a drink. And then they would walk down and be like, screw it. And then they would just walk straight down that way. And that's how that shot was done.
Buy me a drink. Buy me a drink over there. Please. What's the matter?
So yeah, this is the angle, the second angle they shot this scene on, and from this perspective, Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange would be right here, and they'd be facing that way, and over there is where the World Trade Center was, and unfortunately, you can look over there now, it's covered in nothing but buildings and stuff, so you can't even get an angle from there.
What's the matter?
Deja vu. I don't know where,
but I've seen this view before.
So, of course, we went downstairs, and we went to the bar known as Harry's, which, I gotta be honest, guys, has the best food and drinks in the entire city. And quite frankly, despite some furniture shifts, the place actually looks the same as it did in the movie. I was convinced for a while that they shot this in a soundstage, but I think they actually might have shot it for real here. Hell, the scene where Jeff Bridges makes a call to the mayor of New York, there's not even a phone booth anymore because who the fuck uses phone booths, and is now a storaged wine center. And I think if I was Dwan in that situation, I want a couple of those bottles.
How about that nice offer you made me?
So since I'm here at Harry's and I'm at the bar over here, I figured might as well celebrate the movie by getting an actual drink here. So, as Jeff Bridges said in the movie, get smashed. Not bad.
You've been through so much excitement, it's in your blood like dope.
But we actually also managed to find the spot where Dwan was looking outside and Kong's hand reaches in to grab her. Now, I'm not sure if this sequence was done for real with Carlo Rambaldi's animatronics given the amount of space, but if it was done here, I'll give kudos to the filmmakers for actually shooting it in this exact spot. That doesn't excuse the fact that I can still see the window where Kong peeked through, which was really creepy. Ugh. The food here is spectacular, and we're actually the thing is, what's interesting is that they had the bar was on the other side of the room, but since then they've had to renovate and actually push it over to this side of the bar.
Well, to be fair, the food here is way better than any of the McDonald's I went to.
I am literally in a McDonald's and they're playing anime in Times Square. This is freaking awesome. Okay, Times Square McDonald's. Y'all gotta play, they're playing some anime shit here. So this angle here is interesting because here is where a deleted scene happened in Kong 76 where you can see it in the extended cut, but Jeff Bridges would steal a bike here and he would ride down this street. He would come all the way out from that way and would ride down this way and go right down to where Delmonico's is. Delmonico's? I can't really pronounce it. This is another one of the locations which, you know, as an extra bit from the 70s movie is actually pretty cool. Okay guys, where we're about to head to right now is sacred grounds for Kong fans. This location was only used once in the 76 movie, but it has a huge significance to Kong 76. This here is St. Patrick's Cathedral, and for any King Kong 76 fans, this is a very important site because I am actually standing right here. I am on the same angle where the camera crew had a scene where an abandoned carriage basically came around this corner and came down this way, and we cut right here. They passed by, and then we go into a zoom-in shot of the cathedral. A priest walks right in there. Priest walks out, sees Kong walking by, and does a cross thing. Incredible that we are on the exact spot where this scene took place. Holy shit. And you know what, guys? Since we're at the cathedral, why don't we try to recreate that shot? Now, once again, for any Kong fan, this is another significant spot from the 76 remake. This is the New York Public Library, and right at that lion statue right there is where one of the military National Guard officers was waiting for Kong to come down 5th Avenue, down this way, and he says this very infamous line from the film, which we're actually going to recreate right now, because I think that'd actually be pretty fucking cool, so let's do this.
He's coming down 5th Avenue right on schedule, almost to 42nd Street. Power's back on. Keep it quiet. Get in the shadows.
Now, while chronologically, geologically, none of these locations make any sense and don't really connect together, we of course reached one of the two finales for Kong history. While I will discuss the original, I do want to get this out of the way first. That of course being the former home of the World Trade Center towers. Which, having a huge significant impact for me in terms of Kong's history, I didn't want to overstay my welcome with the pop culture, given the towers are not there anymore, and the massive impact and legacy this place has had for the last 20 years. Even visiting the mall near the location, I couldn't help but feel a very cold and spiritual presence here.
So, we don't want to overstay our welcome here out of respect, but we're going to guess that Kong probably parked right in there. The styrofoam model is parked right in there. This is where they shot the whole finale to the movie. It's absolutely, like, really emotional and heavy here, especially the fact that Kong's final stand was all here and it's no longer here. If you look up, you can see a lot of this stuff happening, but yeah, this is just very, very, very emotional shit here. And, like, I'm actually shaking right now holding the camera, so yeah, we just wanted to come here, pay our respects to not only the people here, but also, you know, where the movie was shot. So, there you have it. This is all where the finale of Kong 76 happened some 40 years ago. Absolutely incredible.
But let's let the clouds part and let the sun come in. As we headed back up north to find our last location, we couldn't help but come across one of Kong's original towers to climb before the creation of his true New York throne with the Chrysler Building.
Now, interesting enough, I remember a long time ago when I went on Google Images, there was a foreign bootleg DVD copy of the 1933 Kong going around, and instead of being on the Empire State Building, they put him on the Chrysler Building, which I thought was really funny because they just, obviously the DVD makers didn't know which building Kong was on. So I look at that DVD cover, I'm just like,
funny enough, when Cooper was creating the original Kong, the Empire State Building didn't even exist in the early stages of production. Aside from the Chrysler Building, Cooper originally thought to put the giant ape atop the Woolworth Building. That was most likely in the original drafts by Edgar Wallace. Instead of being shot down, he would be hit by lightning, as sort of an act of God. Hell, years later, Disney would take that concept of a giant beast atop the Woolworth Building with the 2007 film Enchanted, as the mighty dragon climbs up the building and actually is struck by lightning, which I like to think was a nice little tribute to the original drafts. However, come 1932, as production started on the original film, the Empire State Building had just opened, and it seemed appropriate that at the time, the tallest building in the world would be where Kong makes his final stand. And for Cooper, that was the best option, which brings us to the iconic building that still stands to this day. So here we are, right next to the Empire State Building. This is the most iconic bit in Kong history. This is where the great ape climbed, went to the top.
Here come the planes! Slow, Jenny! You shoot him and not hit Ann? Don't get on the roof! Here! They'll be shooting!
Now, a fun little behind-the-scenes fact in the majority of Kong films throughout history, in the 1976 film, Dino stated that if they couldn't get the permits to shoot the finale on the World Trade Center, that they would move to the Empire State Building. However, when it was confirmed, there were a lot of protests at this building, with men in monkey suits protesting the ape's change from his original home in New York. But as fate would have it, that would not end up being the case. However, in March 2004, after the release and success of The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, winning Peter Jackson and the entire production a buttload of Academy Awards, they and the early casted Naomi Watts as Ann Darrow made a trip to New York and went up to the Empire State Building for research purposes during pre-production.
I wish I was Spider-Man right now.
They even got special permission to go to areas that most of the public isn't allowed to see, including being on the top of the damn building on the cone! Hell, Jackson's camera, because of the communication mast, started to go haywire and he got off there pretty damn quickly. However, inside the cone of the building are a ton of signed autographs by workers of the building itself. And of course, Peter Jackson and the crew couldn't resist signing their names in the cone as well. Now, aside from those little tidbits, the Empire State Building has a ton of King Kong related Easter eggs and merchandise to sell in the gift shop. Not to mention this amazing glass cabinet with an awesome tribute to the 8th Wonder. All work and no Kong makes Jack a dull boy.
There's more than one way to get a gorilla off the Empire State Building.
So yeah, we're here on the Empire State Building, top of the world. And there's a great view right here. Look at this, guys. Wow. Just incredible. Perfect timing. Beautiful shot right there. Can't get this anywhere else, even at my place. But this was our final stop. There's the top of it right there. That's where the big guy was some 86 years ago. You can just picture him right there atop there, which is beautiful. Now, if I were to aim correctly of where the background shot was that the filmmakers took, it would have been right there. And the Empire State Building would have been placed in the foreground with the planes and everything, which is amazing. And then he just plummeted all the way down to right here, flat in the center of the streets, and everybody observed and everything. But the real question is what happened to the body. That's something that none of the films explained, although Kong King of Skull Island, the adaptation by Joe DeVito, did explain that they took his body and they just took the skeletal remains and put them on the American Museum of Natural History, which is kind of cool. But I think that's the closest explanation. But that's one of the biggest plot holes at the end of the film. Like, what'd they do with the body? So there you go. There's where Kong was once laid to rest in the original and the 2005 remake, and there's the Empire State Building where he made his final stand, which is pretty awesome.
Well, Denham, airplane's got.
Oh no, it wasn't the airplane. It was Beauty killed the beast.
And that about wraps it up, guys. Seeing New York once again is always a fun treat for me, every chance I can get. And this was the first time, outside of getting background plates for my own remake, that I was able to experience all the sacred grounds where these films were shot. And for any King Kong fan, I'd highly recommend taking a New York location tour to check out all the sights and sounds from both the films and other movies shot in Manhattan. Maybe someday I'll take a look at more locations, whether it be in California or on the islands of Kauai, where they also shot Jurassic Park, but that will require a lot of funds to take, and given the current world situation, that is also a little bit impossible. But who knows? Unlike the crappy storms here in Manhattan, I feel the light is at the end of the tunnel sometime soon. And when things open up again, I'd recommend everybody checking out Kong's second island and the thrones that he proudly sat upon.
Perfect cell. What's news from our progress?
Construction goes perfectly, my lord. The portal will be ready in no time.
Excellent. Soon, our time will come.
That is not all the good news I bring, my liege. We've tracked 18 CPU data to the outer reaches of space, and came across a temple within world MCU-4. It appears the warrior seeks out an artifact known as the King's Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet, you say? Now this news is very fortunate.
Shall I send word to our allies in that world?